Why don't we ask questions? Or why do we not want to be asked questions? Because we don't want to know what the answer is. So that's one of the most common questions that people ask. Well, how are you? And I played a game once where I said, oh, terrible. Things are really bad and life is really up the creek and I'm up there without a pedal. And they don't know what to do with you. Because the standard response, let's say in Australia, well, how are you? Oh, good. And then I love this. People say, how are you? And they go, and you do this good thing. And I went, really? Are you good? Are you really good? So if someone asks you how you're doing, they really don't want to know whether you're jet lagged, where your father died yesterday, or your daughter's got a cold, or you didn't sleep last night because the baby kept you up all night. They're actually not interested. They just want you to say good.
What about other questions, like what you think in the leadership perspective? What kind of questions are people not asking?
So the questions that, let me give you an example. Recently, I was working in an organisation and the CEO sent me an email and he said to me, oh, by the way, we're going to make a $480,000 loss for last month. And I went, what? And then 2 weeks later, we were working with the team and I said, guys, who didn't know this? And they went, oh, we all knew. And I said, yeah, none of you spoke about it. So no one wants to know the question to ask that says, how did that happen? And when did it start happening? And at what point did you walk past it?
So if you unpack that, why do you think that is?
Because we don't want the bad news. We don't want to be responsible for our part in whatever's going on. I have a statement about responsibility that I think if people took responsibility and asked the questions that no one wants to be asked, then responsibility looks like this. If I'm willing to be responsible for the smallest atom in the furthest reaches of our galaxy, then what I do here and now would be different. So imagine what it would take. I'm not saying be responsible for the smallest atom. I'm saying if I'm willing to do that, then who I am and what I do changes.
So,
and I will ask the tough question. Imagine asking the tough question. So this happened in February. In fact, I said to them, what is the lag period in your business? That is the time when you begin to market and push into the market to the point when the money drops, right? How long does that take? And they said anywhere between 90 and 180 days. So I said, so tell me what you were doing 180 days ago inside of this business. What was going on? What decisions weren't you making? What pushes weren't you making into the market? And what calls were not being made? Because if you knew what you were doing back then, you will know why the result is the way it is today. That's the question people don't want to know. They act surprised. No, it was not a surprise. Because in November, when I spoke to the CEO, I said, what are you doing about this? I can see the numbers. What would happen?
Is it just because it's hard work? Or is it because of other people that people don't ask the question? Because like, you know, if you look at the dynamic in a meeting, you know, and I'm guilty of that. Like I always go for the next thing. I'm always very excited by what's happening next week. And someone's like, yeah, but there's a problem with that. I don't want to know. Insurance or something. Like,
yeah.
Stop.
I want to know that. Yeah.
And so I have to learn to mitigate that. But is there a social pressure to not ask questions?
Well, we live in the now. Plus, when we ask questions, it actually forces people to think. And there's a great quote by Henry Ford, and he said, "The hardest thing in the world to do is think. That is why so few people do it." So if I'm asking you questions that demand you using your own grey matter, it's exhausting. You get tired by that. So if you're going to ask questions, then people will get tired, and then they'll also throw tantrums like 3-year-olds. Have you ever had that moment when you ask someone a question and they'll say, "But you know the answer, just give it to me." And I went, "No." Because if you do not learn to think, when I die, who will feed you? So I'm only here for a short space of time. I'm going to ask the question, stick with what it's going to take to get the answer. That will be powerful.
So you got this event coming up.
Yes?
Can we talk about why would people turn up to that? Like, what is the pain that you're in when you're not asking the right questions? Like, what happens to your business?
Good question. What happens to our businesses when we don't ask the right questions? The questions that have people think. There are questions that need to be asked inside a business that people don't ask because they don't want to upset someone, or they're working really hard. So don't push the envelope with them. Don't force them into a position where they need to think about what they're doing and work out whether or not they could improve it. Because predictably, as a leader, if you're not asking those questions, those tough questions, the ones that actually elicit a thinking person's answer. When someone is doing all the thinking, then someone else is irrelevant. So if as a leader you're doing all the thinking, you'll probably find that no one else is doing the thinking and they're just going to go do the doing, and it could have been done better. When you ask questions, you're asking people to think about what would be better, greater for this business, and what contribution could you make because I asked you the question, rather than something else. The toughest thing is we don't do that, because at times it's just easier to tell them what to do.
So what are the pain points? Is it just that you make...
Well, at some point, the business cannot grow then beyond the capacity of the leader to be involved in everything. The business gets stifled then, and the beauty of their product or service is not experienced by more people because the leader owns all the intellectual property and it sits here in their head. So if you want to grow your business, you start asking questions of your people, how could we do this better? And then let them tell you, and don't correct them. Don't make them wrong, make them right.